Welcome to Food Friends, a podcast inspiring home cooks to try new dishes in the kitchen by sharing trusted recipes, tips, and friendship. Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Kari. We met in Los Angeles over 15 years ago as personal chefs and haven't stopped talking about food since. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating. Hi, Sonia.
Hi, Kari.
Sonia, what was your best bite this week?
My best bite, Kari, was Italian wedding soup.
Ooh, tell me more.
I love the Garten recipe. I think it's pretty well known out there for Italian wedding soup. It's one of her more famous recipes. Have you ever made or had Italian wedding soup?
I am so glad you asked me this question, but you're kind of outing me. I've never made any Italian wedding soup at all. And I am 100% not familiar with this recipe, which apparently a lot of other people are.
Oh, I wouldn't give yourself a hard time about that at all. There's certainly many soups I haven't had that you've made. That's why it's fun to talk about these things.
Absolutely.
So what's great about Italian wedding soup is it really is a meal in a bowl. It's way more than a soup. It's a chicken stock-based soup with your standard veggies, but you also make chicken meatballs. I'm going to describe them to you. And then you also add tons of spinach or greens and pasta. So it's everything all together.
Oh my God, this is right up my alley. How have I not made this soup?
You would love this soup. Okay, so what you do is you start with, it's best if you have homemade chicken stock. If you don't, you can get a good quality store-bought one. It's fine because your meatballs are actually going to add a lot of flavor. But if you've taken the time to make a good chicken stock, this is where
you should use it.
Yeah, and this is where I pull it from my freezer. And then it's just a base of standard carrot, celery, onion, garlic. Okay, you sweat those, you get them all nice and softened, you add your liquid to it, and you get your soup simmering. And while your soup's simmering, you make the meatballs. And you take ground chicken, dark meat or white meat actually works. I've done it with both.
Okay.
Ground chicken Italian sausage. That's really important.
That adds so much flavor.
It's such a nice touch.
I make meatball soup, but I basically just use the good ground pork, mild Italian ground pork, and that adds so much flavor to it too. But you're just doing the same thing with a lighter meat.
Yes. You add minced garlic or grated garlic, parsley. I don't think that there's onion because the sausage has all that flavor. Egg, breadcrumbs. Okay.
Parmesan in it?
It's Parmesan and pecorino. But what I will say is I've made every different version of this you can think of. And like for my client who doesn't eat gluten, instead of breadcrumbs, I do almond flour. And that works really well and keeps it really tender and is delicious. And for my clients who don't eat dairy or dairy and meat together, or for myself, I've skipped the pecorino and Parmesan, although that adds a tremendous amount of flavor. So if you're not using pecorino or Parmesan, you need to add more salt. And then I also like to add more spices just to get more exciting, like onion powder, Italian seasoning. Okay, then you bake your meatballs. So you're not having to stand over a stove frying. And Ina's graciousness in the recipe, she says, they don't have to be perfectly round. So I love that note, don't you?
Right. I do love that note. When you're in a soup bowl, it kind of doesn't matter.
You can also start your meatballs and then simmer your soup. You can do this in either order because you're putting them in the oven for about 30 minutes. They're really getting cooked. You're not partially cooking them. And they're getting browned, at least on one side, at least on the pan side. Then you add them back to the soup with pasta. That pasta is also going to make that soup thicker. If you don't want to add pasta, you can leave it out.
Do you cook your pasta separately? Or
no,
do you
simmer it.
You simmer it in. Okay.
So it creates a kind of like starchiness to the broth.
Yeah,
it's lovely. But you could also cook it separately and add it in later. The soups are so forgiving for this reason.
They are.
So definitely do what works for you. And if you're using a gluten-free pasta, I would definitely cook it separate. I would not cook it in the pot because it'll turn into a gloopy mess. And at the very end, you add chopped dill per Ina and your spinach and you wilt that down. And I just think it's such a perfect cold weather dish. It has all the vibrancy from those greens and the herbs. It has all that richness from the meatballs and that broth, hopefully homemade if you can, but don't worry about it if you can. And then all those extra vegetables too. And I also feel like if you have a kid that likes meatballs, and then it's very kid friendly, and you could also omit the spinach if your kid really didn't like spinach. There's lots of ways to personalize it.
What I love about this soup, Sonia, is that it's a soup you can chew. And that's something that I really love. There's these comforting meatballs, the bite of the pasta, but there's also greens. It's like you really don't need anything else. I mean, you could serve with this with bread. My son would definitely want bread or croutons, but you don't need that because you're really getting that with the meatballs and the pasta.
Yeah, you definitely could serve this with bread. I also made a harvest salad for a side. I didn't use a recipe, but what I did is I got the extra spinach that I didn't need for the soup.
Yeah.
I combined with some romaine, and then I roasted off some cubed butternut squash. I added pomegranate seeds and some shaved beet, those candy cane beets that look really pretty.
So beautiful.
And so I shaved that with the roasted squash once it was cooled, with pomegranate and a really simple maple Dijon dressing. And so that kind of bright, colorful salad against this very homey, hearty soup was a great meal.
I mean, that is a gorgeous dinner. I want that dinner at my house tonight.
So, Kari, what was your best bite of the week?
Well, Sonia, my best bite of the week is very different. It's a homemade granola bar with granola and peanut butter and a little bit of honey. This is actually something I used to make for my clients. I had this family that I worked for, and they were a mom and dad and two little girls. The family that I was working for went on a trip to Utah, and they brought these granola bars back, and they're called Samak Stickies. They brought me a few, and I ended up ordering a few more because I loved them so much and I knew that I could recreate them. The description on their website, I think, really helps you understand what they look like. They are no-bake treats loaded with peanut butter, honey, and granola. When I say granola, I would describe that as Grape Nuts Cereal. Sonia, do you know what Grape Nuts Cereal is?
I, of course, know what Grape Nuts Cereal is. I am low-key obsessed with Grape Nuts Cereal. But so you're saying instead of oats, they use grape nuts in these granola bars?
They didn't. I think they used their own house granola, and then they just kind of basically made these little circular bars that are held together with peanut butter, honey, and then the granola is the main part of it. But when I remade the recipe, I use grape nuts, and then I take honey and I melt it with a little bit of peanut butter. And what I found is that I could make it stick a little bit better if I added a little bit of flax meal or a little bit of wheat germ or something that would kind of hold it all together. I've been
So you got this granola bar from your client, which was made with oats. Right? It had oats. They had their own, you said house-made granola they must have made it with, but their granola was oat-based.
But it looks like grape nuts. That's what it looks like when you look at the bar. And
so when you looked at the bar, even though it was made of oats, you're like, oh, I could recreate this with grape nuts on my own without having to make a crazy granola that looks like grape nuts. Is that where your head was?
That's where my head was because they call it a no-bake treat. And I was like, well, what does this look like? The recipe online, it's funny, I also included finely chopped walnuts in it. And I think it originally might have had walnuts in it. Maybe the granola has walnuts in it. So, but it's just these little they're so peanut buttery and sweet. And I just thought I can do this if I just use, it looks like grape nuts.
Tell us what the recipe has and what you swap.
So the recipe has peanut butter and honey, and I heat that all together. I add a pinch of salt to that. And then the dry ingredients are grape nuts and finely chopped toasted walnuts. I put those together and it's still very soft. And so then I just add a little bit of wheat germ or flax meal that helps make it a little bit thicker. And so then they stick together better.
And that's it. It's not that many ingredients.
No, it's not that many ingredients at all.
And you don't bake it. You just put it in a casserole dish and you flatten it out?
I basically shape mine into balls and then kind of flatten them a little bit, almost like you would a slider. That's the way that they come if you actually buy them on the website. They're kind of like a little disc, almost like a little hockey puck, a sort of fat hockey puck. You can keep them in the freezer. You can keep them on your counter. I've been putting them in Mac's lunches. He really loves them. I've taken these with me on camping trips, and I used to be a camp counselor at this camp outside of Boston, and I would make a whole batch of these and a whole batch of another kind of granola bar, and I would take them with me to camp because I would always need snacks in the middle of the day.
I just love this reminder about grape nuts. I love this whole thing. Peanut butter, butter, and grape nuts already. You've sold me.
Peanut butter, honey.
Peanut butter,
Yes.
peanut butter, honey,
Yes.
and grape nuts is already a combination that I'm here for. I'm living for. It reminds me too. There's an ice cream shop in LA called Scoops. Have you ever been there?
I have been there, but it's been a long time. I don't know if they're open anymore.
I still think they have one location. Maybe they don't. They had a couple locations. I'm pretty sure they still exist. I hope they do. They used to be famous for a flavor of ice cream which had grape nuts swirled in it. It wasn't called like grape nuts ice cream. It had some other name, but it had this brown sugar grape nut swirl.
Wow.
I think that comes from, I don't know if you ever did this, where you would take grape nuts and you would add brown sugar and milk and you would heat it up in a microwave or get it all soft. You don't know about that?
I never did that.
That's a thing.
I love the crunchiness of grape nuts. They're so crunchy, and I would eat them with milk, but I kind of love that middle ground, and I would always put a little honey on them too.
Yeah, I never put honey. And I think that the idea of it in bar form is really exciting. Like, I want to try this recipe. So you're going to have to share the recipe and your notes on how to make the swaps.
I promise I will do that. I will help all of us with that because I've done it so many times over the years. I kind of do it by eye, but I will go through and measure out all the...
Well, what a fun best bite of the week.
I love it. And I'm going to make some Italian wedding soup for the first time in my life.
Oh, I can't wait for you to try.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.